Sports! We have it all right here on KHTK. Here are some of your top stories. The Tennessee Titans made light work of the Dallas Cowboys last night, defeating them by a final of 28-14 on Monday Night Football. Amari Cooper managed 58 yards and a touchdown on 5 receptions in his Cowboy debut. The Oklahoma City Thunder, their star and MVP, or former MVP, Russell Westbrook, left the game against New Orleans last night with an ankle sprain. His X-rays did come back negative, though, so that's a good thing. Your Sacramento Kings are off today. They return to action tomorrow night as they begin a very, very dangerous 4-game homestand. Game 1 is against the Toronto Raptors on Wednesday night, which is tomorrow night, inside the Golden One Center. Hope to see you out there. Now, more of The Drive with Sports 1140 KHTK.
Rise and shine, sleepyhead.
I'm not letting you go to work today.
Wait, what?
Everybody, listen up.
Welcome to The Drive.
Morning, morning, morning.
You're gonna talk.
Get on the phone at 339-1140.
Pretty awesome, huh?
Jump in on our text line at 441140.
Everyone is talking about it. You must know that.
The Drive starts now.
Welcome back into The Drive. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Carmichael Dave is out sick. He will be back hopefully tomorrow, feeling better. Hopefully he'll be back tomorrow even if he's not feeling better. I mean, honestly.
You're tired of me already, huh? Jerk.
Yes.
We fought last time we were on the air, and I got all excited to work with you again to make amends, and now you're going to, you know
oh
what?
my God, please. I'm
going to hang with Eunice.
Dave...
I'm going to turn my mic off and hang with Eunice. I don't care. We're going to have fun.
Matt Barrows coming up next to talk about the red-hot 49ers. They have won 1 in a row, a 34-3 blowout over the Raiders.
Ha-ha!
Matt, the Raider fan, is pretty psyched about it. But since that game happened, I mean, almost a week ago, we probably won't talk much about that game, but there were so many implications from that game with Raheem Mostert getting hurt. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, and his emergence as a threat as a runner was a legitimate bright spot for the 49ers offense. And whether they think that they can replicate that with somebody else, they have a rookie Jeff Wilson on the practice squad. Matt Days is also on the practice squad as a running back, or whether they draft a running back to bring in with Jerick McKinnon and Matt Breida. It's going to be interesting to see because Kyle Shanahan and running backs coach Bobby Turner have done such a nice job throughout their careers with lesser known backs that they may wind up going with Mostert or bringing in somebody else, and I want to ask Matt about that. It's something that he wrote about over at The Athletic. He also wrote about a possible quarterback controversy in Santa Clara, one that we didn't see this offseason. And I want to bring on Matt Barrows of The Athletic right now to talk all about the red-hot 49ers. Matt, 1 in a row. How's the vibe down there in Santa Clara now that the Niners are back on a winning track?
Streak. This is I sort of equate it to last year's win over the Giants in Week 10. A lot of elation. You know, it just feels good to win, and you saw that in the locker room. You saw that from Kyle Shanahan, who was noticeably more buoyant, I guess I should say, in his press conferences than he was after those really tough losses. A couple to the Cardinals, a blowout to the Rams. They thought that they were going to win in Green Bay, and they didn't at the end. So those were losses, but they were tough losses for this team to take. So this was decidedly different.
Well, and the big story coming out of this one was the play of Nick Mullins, and obviously he's not going to take over as Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not going to take over as the starter for Jimmy Garoppolo, but you wrote on The Athletic that that there could be a competition for that number 2 spot next year. Do you foresee Mullins continuing to start as kind of getting a head start on that number 2 spot for next year?
Yeah, I do, and I do think that there's going to be a competition for the number 2 spot no matter what happens. I mean, the only scenario where you wouldn't have a competition is if Beathard, gets the starting job back, and he just is phenomenal the rest of the year. The other scenarios are, Mullins and Beathard compete in the off season for that number 2 role. Or, if both guys struggle, and that's a very plausible scenario. down the stretch, then Kyle Shanahan has to think about bringing in somebody else, whether it's a veteran, maybe it's Tom Savage, maybe it's somebody better than Tom Savage, or even using one of his draft picks on the position, because we'll have gone through 2 seasons of C.J. Beathard under this scenario where he doesn't really kind of show any signs of progress. So you've got a guy coming off an ACL injury. You don't want that scenario to happen again. Remember, the backdrop to all of this is that 2019 is the season. This is what they've been gearing for. I mean, this is where you're supposed to see the liftoff finally for this franchise. So if you don't see it then we're really talking about these guys being on the hot seat, I think, because they haven't shown that sign of progress. So my point is that there's a lot of pressure on them to deliver in 2019, and you want to have somebody good behind Jimmy Garoppolo, who's coming off a very major knee injury.
Something that I noticed in that game on Thursday, as we talked to Matt Barrows of The Athletic here on the drive, is the Raiders seem to have quit on John Gruden, whereas we don't see that from the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, and we haven't seen it through 2 pretty dismal seasons. Is that buying him some goodwill in Santa Clara? Maybe he's not churning out the wins, but obviously there are circumstances out of his control with some of the injuries and stuff. And the players continue to play for him. Is that buying him some additional time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was a very sharp contrast between the 2 teams, and Shanahan and the 49ers come out, looking good because of that contrast. But that's what we were saying last year. It's like, they're on this 9-game losing streak, but boy, these guys love each other, and the vibe down there is great, and they're playing hard. I mean, you could only say that a couple of seasons in a row. Again, it comes down to 2019. That's when the rubber hits the road for Shanahan and this team. And you'd like to see that vibe turn into some wins. I don't think anybody's expecting a hot streak like they had at the end of last season this year, but there's some winnable games here. I mean, you'd like to see them beat the Giants. You'd like to see them go on the road and beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know about winning in Seattle yet, but playing better there. So there are some benchmarks, some barometers, litmus tests, whatever you want to call it, for this team in these last 7 games, and it'll be interesting to see whether they hit those marks.
Matt, building off of Kyle's last question a little bit, a 2-7 record might indicate a team that is frustrated with one another, locker room, maybe not getting along, frustration with the head coach, and a lot of what you just talked about already answered my question a little bit. But there still tends to be, or seems to be, from my perspective, a feeling and a theme of optimism around this team going forward, that they seem to be pretty comfortable with where they're at, even though they would like to obviously have more wins than losses going into a very important 2019. Of course, the injuries have happened, which you can't predict, and this team is trying to get over. But every time I see any kind of reports or any indication that Shanahan might be on the hot seat or there's frustration with this locker room, I just don't see it when it comes to interactions on the sidelines and on the field. Would you personally say that this unit recognizes what path that they're on, how much time it could potentially take, and the majority of people, I won't say everybody, but the majority of people are bought in?
Yeah, I mean, I would use Joe Staley as an example. I mean, he's been on some really bad teams, and I think he's been around long enough that when he realizes that it's hopeless, and he's been to the very highest you could be, going to a Super Bowl, and he's been on a 2-win team, and he seems to be keeping the faith on this. I mean, he's a guy who you can sort of read his face pretty easily. When it's hopeless, you can read it in Joe Staley. And he very much believes in Shanahan. He believes in the team. He likes the people around him. He likes Garoppolo. He really likes the rest of the crew on the offensive line, especially his de facto little brother, Mike McGlinchey. So he's very much has bought into where this is going. And this is a guy who's at the end of his career, and maybe he's got 2 years left, and you would think, boy, if it's not going to happen here, I'd like to be someplace that I can win. That's not the case at all with him. He wants to be in Santa Clara with this team and kind of seeing it through. So I think he's a good microcosm, I think, of the rest of the players on the team.
It's extremely unfortunate, not just for 49er fans, but really for the NFL fan who was interested and bought in to see what Jimmy Garoppolo could do as not only as a consistent starter every single day, but as a leader for this team. I'm curious, Matt, is he still embracing that leadership role, and is he still being a leader for this franchise in the locker room and on the sidelines despite being sidelined with the injury?
Well, no, he's not allowed to be on the sideline quite yet. He's still on the crutches, so there's a sort of a safety issue about what would happen if somebody came hurtling out of bounds. So he's not able. I mean, it's a very awkward position for somebody who's basically dedicating his day toward rehab. You're not able to really take part, certainly in the practices. You can take part in some of the meetings, but you also don't want to overstep your bounds and get in the way of whoever is starting like that. So I think he realizes that he's taken the right approach. He kind of knows all the angles on this, and nobody is questioning where Jimmy Garoppolo stands in this organization. They just want him to focus on his rehabilitation and get back, and that'll be the storyline in the spring. I mean, when exactly does he start throwing? When exactly can he resume practice? We don't know that yet, but the rough guess is that he does a little bit of stuff, in those June practices, the OTAs, and then that final minicamp, and then is ready to kind of let loose again when training camp starts up in late July. So that's sort of the template that they're working with.
Here with Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Matt, we saw Richie James get the start over Trent Taylor on Thursday night. Do you think we might see some other guys who haven't gotten a ton of playing time this year start to get into the lineup here down the stretch? Your guys like Julian Taylor or maybe Marcel Harris or DJ Reed. Do you foresee the Niners playing some of those guys to see what they have down in the bottom portion of their roster?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and those are the two guys that you mentioned that I would highlight as well. I mean, they started Tyvis Powell in this last game at strong safety, and he actually did pretty well. But I think if Jaquiski Tartt were injured from here on out, and I expect him to come back from his shoulder injury for this next game, but if there were another injury, then yeah, they'd like to see what they have in Harris. He's really sort of tailor-made for that position, a big, aggressive guy who likes to hit. That's what that strong safety, that sort of Cam Chancellor spot is made for. Julian Taylor is a little bit harder to get into the game just because they already have an abundance of defensive linemen who all sort of kind of play the same, and they have trouble having anybody stand out next to DeForest Buckner, and that's really a big issue, I think, for this team, is that you've got a guy in DeForest Buckner who's fantastic, who attracts a lot of double teams, and you would think that those double teams would allow the guy playing next to him to excel, and they've experimented with a lot of different tandems there. They've had Eric Armstead next to him, they've had Solomon Thomas, they've had Sheldon Day more of late, and none of those guys has really taken off. So, maybe at some point they do put Julian Taylor in. He was sort of limited to the base package, playing that defensive end position in the base package during training camp in the preseason. So I'm not sure he would get a lot of pass rush opportunities. But, yeah, I mean, at some point you do want to see what you have. You do want to see whether you want to retain some of these other guys. So that definitely is in the offing for the second half of the schedule.
Speaking of pass rushers, and I tweeted at you yesterday that I was going to ask you about this, so here we go. Bruce Irvin was released by the Raiders. He's on waivers, will likely clear waivers. Do you see the Niners making a run at him, or is this just a scenario where they're not going to bring anybody in until the offseason?
I do see them kicking the tires, at least kind of seeing what the landscape is there. It may be that Bruce Irvin and he would be a free agent at that point. Has no desire to go from a 1-win team to a 2-win team. He's looking for a contender, and all the scuttlebutt is that he's really looking to return to Seattle in that defense. But maybe it's that he wants to stay in the Bay Area, or that the 49ers are willing to pay him a little bit more than these other teams are. I would say, the 49ers are interested. I don't think that they're going to pay a lot of money for a guy who's in his 30s, especially given what this upcoming draft is going to have as far as edge rushers. But they need to restock that position, and they can't look any gift horse too closely in the mouth, just because that's a spot where they're weak. This last game, notwithstanding, it was a bit of an outlier for their season. But my point is, I think they'll take a look at him. I think it's really going to depend on what Bruce Irvin wants at that point.
Talking to Matt Barrows of The Athletic. You should all subscribe to The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com. Subscribe to some of the best sports journalism you're going to find. And reading Matt there, you talked about Richard Sherman's snap count and how he's likely not going to hit his benchmark for his contract incentive on that front. But there are still some incentives he can get with the Pro Bowl and making an all-pro team. What do you see for his future in San Francisco, though? Do you see him coming back next year on a restructured deal, or do you think they bring him back on his current contract? What do you see happening there?
Yeah, according to Kyle Shanahan, they want him back. According to Richard Sherman, he wants to be back. He's sort of the Joe Staley of the defense in that regard. So I don't see anything changing. He's got the contract in hand. If you ask people around the league, it favors the 49ers. So I don't think that they would want to tear it up. Again, these last 7 games will dictate a lot. Can he stay healthy for it? Is that calf going to get better as the year goes on, or is it going to get worse as the year goes on? And by the way, that turned from a calf injury to a calf and heel injury. So the idea that it was not related to his heel issues, like they were saying earlier in the season, probably is untrue now. So that seems ominous, but he did play and played well on a short work week leading up to the Raiders game. So they are going to get quite a bit of rest, ahead of this Giants game, and then they're on their bye. So maybe that'll be enough to sort of kind of propel him for those last 6 games of the season.
I don't want to get too far into the draft with 7 games to go, but what do you, without free agency, what do you see as the 49ers' top needs in the draft? I think edge is probably at the top, but what do you think comes after that?
Well, I think what comes after that is wide receiver, but it's going to be a rough year at wide receiver in free agency. Nobody really leaps out at you when you look at the list of possible to-be free agents at that position, and really in the draft as well. It's very hard to kind of find a top 10 guy in that group. So I agree with you. I think it'll be edge very much so with that first pick, and you're looking at Nick Bosa, you're looking at Rashawn Gary from Michigan, I think you're looking at Cleveland Farrell, and you're looking at this guy Montez Sweat from Mississippi State as probably the 4 guys who are going to end up as the 4 top 10-ish type of picks. And really, if you watch them, they all kind of fit the mold perfectly. I think it's going to be hard for the 49ers to miss on that. But after that, you would like to get some more bells and whistles for this offense, but I think that's going to be hard to do in this offseason.
Raheem Mostert's a restricted free agent. Do you see them trying to get him back after what he showed as a runner this year and his contributions on special teams? Or do you think that he showed enough that there might be a little bit of free agent market for him?
Yeah, I think that there might be a little bit of a free agent market for him. I was talking to his agent yesterday, and he wanted to stress that, this is a really gruesome injury, but it's one that a guy can, return 100%. You would think that, you wouldn't be able to perform like in the weight room like you would have, like with, say, curls or something like that, where you're putting a lot of stress on the arm. But the arm is supposed to return 100% normal. So grizzly injury, but one that the guy can bounce back from 100%. And Mostert has shown he's the ideal number 3 running back. He's a guy that really can give you a lot on special teams, and then if he has to be tapped to play running back, he can score from anywhere on the field. So really, really versatile. A guy that you want on your team, can sort of be the captain of your special teams at the very least. So I would imagine that there would be some interest in him outside the 49ers, but I think the 49ers really want to have him back. I mean, he's a guy that's really, really well liked by his teammates in the locker room, well liked by the organization. Does a lot of community service work, so he's a guy that you root for. I mean, it's a shame that the worst injuries seem to happen to the best guys on the team, but that's a case that seemed to happen the other night against the Raiders.
Well, hey, a guy that we really like having around is Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Hey, Matt, last thing before we get out of here.
You guys going to bring me back next year?
Yeah, I think we will. Hey, real quick before we get out of here, how much, scale of 1 to 10, do you like having me on here more than Dave?
Well, I mean, it would be anyone more than Dave at this point. I mean, maybe Leon Helmsley I would even pick ahead of Dave. I'm trying to think of the most reprehensible people I can think of. No, I miss Dave. Dave comes out with the out-of-the-blue question, and sometimes it makes no sense whatsoever, but he keeps you on your toes, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Whatever,
good.
Matt.
I vote for Dave.
Very good. Hey, Matt, thank you so much, and be sure to send Matt questions for his mailbag.
I'm still working on the mailbag. I need a couple of really good questions to round it out.
I'll have Dave send you some questions there.
Yeah,
and
please.
you can get your fix. Matt, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week, all right?
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks,
Talk
buddy.
to you
We'll
soon.
see you. That's
Bye.
Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Like I said, theathletic.com. For real, go there and subscribe. I know Dave gives a sales pitch every time we have somebody from The Athletic on, but the app is awesome. The website's awesome. Just a super clean, easy look, easy to read. And the running joke is that all the good writers eventually get picked up by The Athletic because they do have so much talent there, and local coverage, national coverage, whether you're college football, NFL, golf, hockey, baseball. It's really top-notch stuff and very much worth the few bucks a month that you spend on it.
He's got a great first name, too, so that helps.
Yeah, really top-notch first name.
Yeah.
Are you on The Athletic?
Am I on The Athletic?
Yeah. Or do I need to give you the sales pitch too?
Well, let me tell you what. When The Athletic hired me about 2 years ago, I'm happy. Oh, you mean subscribe to them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Heck yeah.
It was last year, coming up on my 1-year anniversary with The Athletic. I got a Black Friday deal last year and jumped on it immediately.
Yeah, I don't know how I could get through sports life without The Athletic.
Yeah, it's great. So Riley McAtee of The Ringer is going to come up next. We want to shift back to Kings real quick.
Hooray.
On their last day off before they kick off this 4-game homestand. Riley McAtee, the resident Kings fan down at The Ringer, the guy who keeps The Ringer folks from just passing over Sacramento, and we appreciate him and love having him on. So we're going to chat with him and see what he thinks about the Kings' 6-4 start in this upcoming 4-game homestand. He's Matt George. I'm Kyle Madson, filling in for Carmichael Dave on the drive at Sports 1140 KHTK.
This is Matt George with your top stories on Sports E1140, and we'll start with Monday Night Football action last night as the Dallas Cowboys hosted the Tennessee Titans and were embarrassed at home as Tennessee won that game 28-14. It was the debut for Amari Cooper, and he finished with 58 yards and a touchdown in 5 receptions. Oklahoma City Thunder star and MVP, or former MVP, Russell Westbrook, is potentially sidelined for a little while again after he sprained his ankle last night. His x-rays did come back negative, though the Thunder beat the New Orleans Pelicans. Your Sacramento Kings are off today, back in action tomorrow night as they begin a 4-game homestand against the Toronto Raptors. Those will be inside the Golden One Center. Now, more of The Drive on Sports 1140 KHTK.
Here we go. The drive continues now.
Riley McAtee of The Ringer will join us next on the Fire Wings hotline. Try one of their delicious 21 flavors of wings today. Fire Wings just wing it. That might be the move for lunch today. A pre-vote lunch, because I'm still registered down in Contra Costa County, so I gotta go down there and vote. But I might wait, grab some fire wings before I go down there. That might be the move. Riley McAtee, the Ringer, is going to join us next. I'm going to chat about the Kings because we get a lot of everything you hear about the Kings here on this station comes from people obviously in Sacramento. But Riley McAtee is a Kings fan, or it comes from Sacramento or Jay Billis. But Riley McAtee is a Kings fan down in LA. He's born in the Sacramento area, raised in the Sacramento area. Now works as an editor down at The Ringer. He's a huge Kings fan. We've had him on the show before to talk Kings, and I want to see if the optimism has seeped down into LA. And I want to see, because he's down at The Ringer, a site that is run by Bill Simmons, somebody who kind of regularly just kind of pushes the Kings aside. So I'm really interested to get his take on their 6-4 start and their upcoming 4-game homestand as we get to Riley McAtee of The Ringer right now. Riley, thank you so much for getting up early on this Election Tuesday to join us.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
I wanted to get your thoughts, the Kings. I think the last time we talked, there was I want to get your thoughts on the Kings. Go.
I think the last time we talked, it was like before the draft maybe, or maybe just after. Yeah, man, they're exciting. Holy cow.
The optimism was not nearly what it's at right now. I think we can agree on that. What I want to around this area in Sacramento, there's this kind of bubbling optimism, this cautious, I'll call it cautious optimism about their 6-4 start. What's it like for you down in LA?
Well, not as many Sacramento Kings fans down here, I can say that.
Losers.
I know that there is like almost the opposite feeling for the NBA team down here in the Lakers, although, people aren't really freaking out, but it's interesting what's happening with the Lakers. But no, like for me, it's similar. It's very cautious optimism. It feels actually similar to when they moved up in the draft and got the number 2 pick. It's kind of like, all right, now let me just hold on and wait for something to go wrong here. But it's fun. They've been so much fun.
How did you feel about the Marvin Bagley pick, since you bring up the number 2 pick? How did you feel about it at draft day, and how do you feel about it now?
Oh, yeah. I wanted Doncic as badly as anybody. I still feel like Bagley is, even though he's playing well, I think it's very weird how he fits with the team. Like they're trying to play fast, and they're trying to have more shooting and space. And with Willie Cauley-Stein playing well and Bjelica playing well, it's like, I don't know where Bagley fits, but it's also, you don't draft a rookie for the first year. We'll see where he gets to in like year 3 or 4 or wherever, but I'm very nervous about him still. I just don't know where he fits in the NBA. I don't know where he fits on the Kings. I just don't know what's going on there, but I'm excited about him. I mean, it's not like he's looked bad. He's looked good.
Riley, I, like you, wanted Luka Doncic initially, but I was not nearly as down on the Bagley pick as some were here in Sacramento. I think I see a little bit more of his fit going forward than you might, but I a lot of it has to do with Vlade's comments and a lot of the Kings' comments after passing on Luka and not drafting him was that they didn't want to take the ball out of De'Aaron Fox's hands as a primary ball handler. I think we're going to learn a lot as to the reasoning behind the not Luka Doncic and the Marvin Bagley pick with the return of Bogdan Bogdanovic. There are a lot of similarities between Bogdan's game and the game of Luka Doncic, having that European-style ball handler or secondary ball handler that could also score. What are you expecting from Bogey for this team coming off of this injury, and what is, I guess, in your mind, the best-case scenario to plugging him into the good thing that this Kings team has going currently?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he can play some with basically Fox, Buddy, Bjelica, and Cauley-Stein at the same time. That would be kind of a small lineup and probably a limited lineup defensively. But I love Bogey. I think it's great that they've looked so great without him on the floor, because he was maybe their best player last year, one of them. I don't know. It'll be exciting because especially when you have guys like Bagley and Fox, you just need every shooter that you can get, and we know that he can shoot. And so he should be great coming back.
Speaking of shooters, the Kings were one of the few teams this summer that had a boatload of cash, and some fans were very frustrated by the fact that they didn't seem to spend it in a way that they could have. They weren't very aggressive in free agency other than the Zach LaVine signing, which I want to ask you about in a little bit. But they seemingly hit one of the steals in the summer with Nemanja Bjelica with how well he has played. Now, he struggled in the most recent game against Milwaukee, but he has been huge for this team so far. What have you thought of that pickup and that signing by Vlade?
Well, I mean, it seems like a slam dunk so far. It seems like he's kind of exactly what somebody like De'Aaron Fox needs in terms of his shooting and everything. I think he's hitting like more than 50% from three now, which obviously will come down. But he stretches the court and he provides space, and he's really fit perfectly, better than I thought he could have. So I don't know. This is how it always goes with Vlade, right? I'm so frustrated by certain things, but there are other times where it feels like he really hit on something that I didn't think that much of Bjelica until now I'm seeing him play, and it's like, man, that guy looks really good and fits really well with what we're doing.
Riley McAtee, resident Kings fan at the Ringer. Hey, Riley, I want to let you know that it's Tuesday, November 6th, and the Kings have a better record than the Lakers.
I didn't think we'd be saying that by November, by election day. Are you kidding?
I got posed a similar question earlier, but I'm trying to rephrase it here. I guess here you go. What was your preseason win total prediction for the Kings, and has it changed?
I mean, gosh, I don't know if I ever really put a hard number on it. I'm going to say I probably had them at 35 games or under. It's changed some. I don't think they're going to keep winning like this is the thing. They're off to a hot start. Maybe it's just the cautious Kings fan in me, but I feel like it's going to come back down. But they're better than I thought. Maybe they'll win 40. I think this will probably be the best season that we've seen in, I don't know what, a decade in terms of wins and losses. Yeah. I think that has a very good chance of happening. I don't really think they're going to make the playoffs at this point. I'm looking at the standings, and it's fun to see them in sixth or wherever. But I don't know if it'll last. But they're definitely, it's inarguable that they're better than I thought they would be. Fox is better than I thought. Bagley's better than I thought. Buddy Hield looks awesome. This is a fun team, and they're not terrible.
You're sounding like Carmichael Dave, Riley. You're starting to stress me out a little bit, but I'm also the guy sitting here in a radio studio with a Sacramento Kings jersey on that says optimism on the back of it. So, yeah, exactly. Wow is the right term. But I was interested to hear about your win total. My measuring stick for the team this season, a lot of it had to do with, do Dave Yeager and do Vlade Divac keep their jobs? What win total, or where do the Kings have to be by the end of the season for them or for the organization to feel comfortable continuing with those two guys at the helm? And the measuring stick, the best one that I could put up was DeMarcus Cousins. If the Kings could win 33 games or more, the maximum they won ever with DeMarcus here, those jobs would be safe. What do you think about that as an appropriate measuring stick for this team?
Yeah, I think that feels about right. I feel like they're not. Does it feel like in Sacramento that they're on the hot seat? Because I feel like it doesn't. If Bagley had been a disaster and maybe things had really, really taken a turn this season, that would have happened. But right now, I'm not even really thinking too hard about their job security. Maybe it's just the fast start. But it feels like, it feels like this team is well on the way to keeping Vlade and Yeager and everybody else in their jobs for at least another season.
So from my experience, personally, Riley, we came into the season with a lot of questions, at least from fans, as to, is Dave Yeager the right guy for this team going forward? Is he truly going to commit to his rotations and his system playing fast? We seem to have that question answered, at least as of right now. But there was a lot more frustration in regards to Vlade, picking Bagley over Luka and his reasoning for it, not spending money in free agency except for trying to throw a boatload at Zach LaVine. There was more frustration and more anger that I experienced towards Vlade than towards this Kings organization, or than towards the Kings specifically, or the pickup specifically. As of right now, I think both of their jobs are safe and their seat is a little bit cooler, but if things went south, I think it would go bad.
The photo of Vlade with the whiteboard in the background showing their, like, who they wanted to draft or whatever definitely did not help him.
Right, correct.
Yeah, I think Dave Yeager is probably a lot safer. I mean, just the sense that they are actually backing up the talk of playing faster. They're playing really fast, and they're shooting, and they're putting guys like Fox and Willie in places to succeed, like, shows that Yeager is being flexible and is adapting to the players that he has. So I've been really happy with him. Vlade's tough. I mean, even with, like, some of his successes and some of his failures, I'm like a more analytically minded guy. So I'm more of a type person that would want to look at the numbers, would want to build toward like a modern NBA team, would look at like shooting and space. And I get the sense that Vlade is not exactly like that. So even where he's had some success and some failure, for me personally, it's like a clash of styles. He's just like not the type of GM that I envision like my team always having.
Yeah, really quick before we go, I wanted to sneak this in. I mentioned the throwing money at Zach LaVine. A lot of Kings fans were relieved that the Bulls matched, but it seems like LaVine, I mean, I know he's number 4 in scoring in the NBA right now, averaging 27 points per game. Would you say he has earned that contract so far, and did the Bulls make the right choice in stealing him away from Sacramento?
I feel like so far, I still don't know if you'd be right for the Kings. I don't know if it would have been right for us to use all that. One of the things that's interesting, I think it'll be interesting come the trade deadline, is that the Kings are one of the very few teams that have cash. So we're one of the very few teams that can, facilitate a trade between teams that maybe don't have it. Obviously, I'm sure you guys talked about that with this Jimmy Butler stuff when we were kind of like rumored to be on the fringe there as like a third team that can take contracts or whatever. And so I still think, like, even if LaVine is having success right now, that down the line there are probably better ways for us to use that money, and we'll figure it out. I don't know. Do you think that we win more games, like, or we're off to a better start if we have LaVine in there? I'm just not sure. I don't see it.
Yeah, me personally, offensively, I think they're fine with Buddy Hield, but they would have been fun. I mean, it would have been fun to see LaVine playing this fast.
Yeah, I love Buddy Hield. I don't want to take minutes from Buddy, so I don't know.
Well, hey,
it would have been fun. LaVine is a fun player. That's true.
Well, hey, Riley. Luckily, your Rams are kicking ass despite the loss this weekend, so you can focus on them as well as the Sacramento Kings, and you'll have the Rams if the Kings do go in the toilet.
You're a Niners fan, is that right?
Yeah.
Are you Niners?
Yeah, sure.
Well, hey, you guys might have a quarterback now. Forget Jimmy. I think you got this new guy. Nick Mullins might be the guy.
Yes, thank you. 151.9 QB rating, leads the league among all quarterbacks with one start this year, and that's an undeniable fact. That's just an empirical fact.
That's straight facts. Yeah, he's basically Montana. What can you say?
Very good. Hey, Riley, thank you so much for carving out a few minutes this morning. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon after the Kings sweep this 4-game homestand.
Yeah, man. I would love to talk about them. They go 4-0. Let's pencil it in.
Yeah, we most definitely will. It's Riley McAtee, the Ringer. Riley, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
So glad to know that we're not the only ones that are cautiously optimistic about Sacramento, and that Riley down there in LA sort of feels the same way. And I think that's kind of the general consensus right now amongst Kings fans. I think there's kind of a fringe on both sides that, it's going to wind up being terrible, or, they're going to the playoffs. But I think most people are kind of right there in the middle.
Yeah, I wouldn't, being the supreme optimist, I wouldn't peg playoffs for this team. I just think that's unrealistic. This 10-game stretch is going to be a lot, or they're going to have a lot to prove and should be pretty eye-opening. But if you are a Kings fan and you're not pleased with this 6-4 start, I question your expectations.
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody's in that same boat. Hey, real quick before we hit the break, join the 1140 Street Team tonight outside the Pavilion at UC Davis as the men's basketball team hosts San Francisco at it's a 7 p.m. tip-off. Get your tickets at ucdavisaggies.com. Final break, and when we come back, what's on tap? Right here on Sports 1140 KHGK. What's on Tap? Brought to you by
Squirrels.
Squirrels, of course. Everybody needs squirrels because I'm not exactly sure what squirrels do. I'm sure they are important in some way, but I think they're mostly just like nature's decorations.
Yes.
Love squirrels. Kings do not play tonight, but we do have NBA action. Believe it or not, when the Kings don't play, there are still games going on. The Hawks and Hornets, Wizards and Mavericks, Nets and Suns, and the Bucks and the Trailblazers. Bucks and Blazers will be fun.
I think Nets and Suns could be sneaky good with Allen versus Aiden.
Yeah, Karis LeVert having a nice year as well, matching up with Devin Booker. So some fun young pieces in that game for sure.
Yeah. I like the Nets personally.
So Riley McAtee, who we just had on the Fire Wings guest line, 21 flavors of juice on Fire Wings, just wing it. Said that he didn't see how Marvin Bagley fits with what the Kings are doing.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't either. I think maybe right now, if Marvin Bagley was at his ceiling, then maybe I would buy it. Because he's kind of a stretch four who doesn't shoot a ton of threes. So I think I could buy that. But it's pretty clear that this kid's not at his ceiling. And like you said at the break when we were chatting about this, he is an athletic big who has a high motor. He rebounds. He does everything you need him to do. He just doesn't shoot a very high quantity of threes. But he's shooting like one a game, and
he's shooting over 50%.
Right. So in theory, the only issue is that he's not taking as many threes as you would like in this style that the Kings are running, this modern stretch four style. I don't think he's going to play the three, which is something that Vladdy said on draft night.
Which was blown out of proportion.
Yeah, and I thought that was strange. If that's your ultimate goal, is to play him at the three in a Kings version of a quote unquote death lineup or whatever, I don't think that that's going to happen.
No, we've made too much of a big deal out of those comments. Same way we ran too far with the super team just young comment. That was Vlade essentially saying that Marvin Bagley is a versatile player, and that was his way of conveying that. He did not mean that Marvin Bagley was going to get a lot of playing time at the three. He meant that he was capable of playing at that spot at times. Now, we've seen Marvin Bagley also defend fours that are also capable of playing as big or athletic threes. So we're talking about the versatility of Marvin Bagley, but in regards to Riley's comments, an athletic big that can run the floor, that is good around the rim, has that quick second jump ability that helps this team with rebounding, that has been a struggle for this team going forward. Nemanja Bjelica is playing over him and starting over him, and rightfully so, because Bjelica is shooting lights out from three-point range and is a lot better attacking the rim than I think people give him credit for. But he's a placeholder, and he knows that. He's holding a spot for Marvin Bagley, who is not averaging as many minutes as Luka Doncic or DeAndre Ayton or Jaren Jackson Jr. And some are holding that against Dave Yeager, thinking he's a number 2 pick. He should be playing more. But if you're looking at him, he's playing 22 minutes a game. He's averaging 12.8 points, also averaging 7 rebounds. He's also averaging over a block per game. And defensively, he's been a lot better than people gave him credit for coming out of college. I mean, we talked about him as being one of the worst defenders in this draft class. And he still has a lot to learn, but he's already shown significant growth in short spurts from summer league to 10 games into the season. I don't know what anybody could be upset at Bagley for, other than the fact that he's not playing as many.
I don't think it's necessarily being upset. I think it's the idea that if you think he's at his ceiling where he's never going to shoot more than a 3 per game, and if he's at his ceiling defensively where he's not a very good defender yet, but very rarely do you see a rookie come in, especially a big, and come in and dominate defensively. Yeah, it's very tough to do.
He's still 19 years old. Look at the growth already for De'Aaron Fox with his jump shot from last year to this year. Still has more to go. Marvin Bagley's in the same boat. I'd say Marvin Bagley's already a better three-point shooter now than De'Aaron Fox was last year. He's just not shooting at a high enough volume. So there's still growth to be had, but to say that he doesn't really fit with this team and what they're trying to do going forward doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, when he first said it, I kind of was awaiting his reasoning, but it just kind of seemed like he didn't he was picturing a kind of slow-footed big who couldn't space the floor, and I think Bagley will eventually do that because he's like I said, he's right. If Marvin Bagley is not going to shoot threes, then he doesn't really fit what the Kings are trying to do. But he's eventually going to shoot a little bit.
He like
be able to space the floor.
Yeah, he like many, I think, fall into the same line of thinking of imagine what Luka, with the numbers that he's putting up in Dallas right now, could be doing for this team at the 3 spot, which is their biggest hole versus...
Maybe, but...
I know, but you also have, and this is not a dig or a gripe, although some people may take it that way, DeAndre Ayton and Luka Doncic were the consensus number 1 and number 2 picks, and they're on the 2 worst teams in the Western Conference right now. That's not an anti-Luka take, that's not an anti-Ayton take, but Marvin Bagley is coming in
guarantee.
Bagley is coming in off the bench for a team right now that is 6-4 and providing valuable minutes. What more could you want?
I'd like to see him start eventually.
And he will.
I think so.
That's the goal.
Matt, thanks for your takes.
Of course, anytime.
Thank you to everybody who listened to us filling in for Carmichael Dave today. We certainly appreciate it. Dave should be back tomorrow, but we'll see. It's still up in the air. I know he wasn't feeling very well this morning. Thank you to Matt Barrows of The Athletic for joining us, talking Niners. Riley McAtee of The Ringer, talking Kings. And thank you to Matt George, Eunice behind the scenes, running all the video. And to Carmichael Dave for letting me jump into the big chair for him. We'll be back tomorrow with more of The Drive on Sports 1140, 6 a.m., right here on this radio station. Sports 1140, KHTK.